So a lot of chapter 1 we'll cover in lab, but there are some aspects of chapter 1 that we're going to look at with the lecture portion, the physiology portion of class. So recall that you need to have your possible exam questions out. You can find those in Blackboard. And this is the answer to the first of your possible exam questions. What are our characteristics of a living organism? So what do you need to be considered a living organism? So cellular composition. Cells are our smallest basic living unit of life. So living is critical here. So these are our basic units of life, living units of life. Metabolism. So we have processes that break down or build up substances. And that is through chemical reactions. And if you recall back to your biology, your types of chemical reactions are dehydration, synthesis, or lysis. With growth, we are building, breaking down processes, including increasing size of an individual and increasing the number of cells. So we're growing. From these metabolic processes, we're going to have waste products. And so we need excretion to eliminate any of those potentially harmful waste products from our metabolic processes. We have responsiveness, so we react to a stimulus. And so we have a reaction to the stimulus, and that is called our effect. Movement, we have the ability to move both the entire organism and within cells in the organism. And so we will go over in chapter 3 the ways in which cellular movement takes place. Reproduction, so you can have two forms of reproduction. You can replicate the organism itself, making offspring, but you also have growth of individual cells. And remember, this is done through mitosis. So mitosis is where you undergo cell division and make two genetically identical cells. And with making a new organism, we use meiosis. And that's how we make our gametes, and then two gametes come together to make a new organism. And so our levels of organization from the smallest to the largest that you'll be required to look at with A&P. There are actually 12 levels, but we're just going to look at these 6 basic ones. So at the chemical level, we start with our basic atoms, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. These atoms come together to make a molecule. And that molecule, our 4 main molecules, are proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. And then those macromolecules come together to make organelles, such as a phospholipid molecule, or a ribosome, or a nucleus, or a Golgi apparatus. Those are all our cellular organelles, and then our cellular organelles all come together to make a cell. The cells come together to make tissues. Tissues will come together to form organs. So organs are made up of one or more tissues. And then organs come together to make organ systems, and then organ systems make our organism. So speaking of organs, our body has 11 organ systems. The first, which will be on exam 1 that we will study, is the integumentary system. And so integumentary system is made up of your hair, skin, and nails. It has these functions: to protect the body, produce vitamin D, retain water, and regulate body temperature. Exam 2, we'll be looking at the skeletal system and the muscular system. Skeletal system supports the body, protects internal organs, provides leverage for movement, reduces blood cells, and stores calcium salts. Our muscular system produces movement and controls our body openings with sphincters and generates heat. Exam 3 will be looking at the nervous system, which helps to regulate body functions along with our endocrine system. So our two regulatory organ systems are the nervous and the endocrine, and I think that's question 1. And then our two systems required for movement are going to be our skeletal and our muscular. Other than regulation, the nervous system also provides sensation, movement, autonomic functions, and higher mental functions via nerve impulses. As I just mentioned, the endocrine system is the other system in which the body regulates body functions. And so this would be exam 1 in anatomy and physiology 2. So exam 4 in A&P 1. So exam 3 is the nervous system, and then exam 4 will be our special senses and the autonomic nervous system. And now with the endocrine system, we're moving into A&P 2. And it is our other regulatory. Exam 2 in A&P 2 will be our cardiovascular system, including the heart and the blood vessel. Pumps and delivers oxygen-poor blood to the lungs and oxygen-rich blood to the tissues, removes waste from tissues, transports cells, nutrients, and other substances such as gases throughout the body. Exam 2 will be lymphatic and immunity. And so our lymphatic system, made up of tonsils, lymph nodes, thymus, spleen, lymphatic vessels, return excess fluids to the cardiovascular system and help support the immune system. Respiratory system, made up of nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, lungs, delivers oxygen to the blood, removes carbon dioxide from the body, and maintains your acid-base balance through our bicarbonate. Digestive system, digests food, absorbs nutrients into the blood, removes food waste, regulates fluid, electrolyte, and acid-base balance also. So exam 3 is the respiratory, immunity, and lymphatics, and then exam 4 will be our digestive system and our urinary system. And our urinary system is going to remove metabolic waste from the body, regulate fluid, electrolyte, and acid-base balance, and stimulate blood cell production. And then the last organ system is the reproductive, and that will be on exam 1 of A&P 2 along with the endocrine system. So the reproductive system in the male produces and transports sperm, secretes hormones, and participates in sexual function. And with the female, produces and transports eggs, site of fetal development, nourishment, childbirth, lactation, hormones, and sexual function. So those are our 11 organ systems, and that is another question in your possible exam questions. And so what are our core principles? We have 4 core principles in the book. So the overall theme is that physiological processes operate to maintain our body's homeostasis, and homeostasis is where our body wants to stay, and any disruptions in this will be brought back to set point and regulated by our nervous and endocrine systems. And these 4 core principles are our feedback loops. We have positive and negative feedback loops, relationship between structure and function, gradients, and gradients will be a big core principle this semester, and cell-to-cell communication. So as I just mentioned, positive feedback loops. The positive feedback loop increases or reinforces the initial stimulus, whereas negative feedback loops oppose or turn off that initial stimulus. And so we have a stimulus such as an injury. This stimulates our clotting system. The platelets are part of that clotting system. They come in and seal off the break in the vessel. But as platelets arrive, they release chemotaxis agents that will help to attract more platelets and more clotting factors. So this is a positive feedback mechanism. And that continues until we have shut off the bleeding. Once it is sealed, then platelet activity decreases and we go back to normal. But all of our negative and positive feedback loops are going to work to keep us at set point. So we have a normal range. We stay within that range. Anytime we start to deviate outside the range, then we will kick in a positive or negative feedback loop to bring us back to set point. And so again, negative feedback loops are going to shut off the initial stimulus. So just like a thermostat, if we fall below our set point where we set our thermostat at, it's going to cause the heat to come on. The heat will warm back up the room, bring it back to set point, and then the heater shuts off. Same thing with our hypothalamus. So body temperature goes down, receptors in the brain detect that. The hypothalamus will trigger actions such as shivering to produce heat and bring our body temperatures back up to normal. Another example of a positive feedback is labor. And that's why labor kind of starts slow and it slowly progresses. And then near the end of the labor, your contractions are much harder, they're much faster. So oxytocin is a hormone that begins this positive feedback mechanism. And if you are not progressing quickly enough in childbirth, they'll give you synthetic oxytocin to help that positive feedback mechanism and to progress labor. All right, so feedback loops, principle 1, principle 2, structure and function. And so usually the structure of our organs and our tissues are reliant on their functions. And so this is showing our respiratory membrane, because the main purpose between the respiratory system and the cardiovascular is to exchange gases. We need a very thin layer of cells, and so it's just a 2-cell layer thick membrane, 1 cell from the blood vessels, 1 from the lung tissue, so gases can easily move across. We would not want a super thick, multi-layered cellular membrane between the cardiovascular and respiratory systems. Otherwise, the gases would not be able to diffuse in and out. So here you can see how our structure relies on our function for gas exchange, so that we don't want too thick of a membrane. Otherwise, it would not be able to carry out its function. Third principle is our gradients. And so things are always going to move from an area of higher to an area of lower. And so that can be based on temperature, concentration, or pressure. The one we'll talk about most this semester will be our concentration gradients, moving from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. Pressure gradients will come in more with AMP2, where we have exchange of gases and things like that. So here we can see a temperature gradient. As we move away from the source, we get cooler. As we move away from the pill dissolving, the concentration of solutes gets lower. As we increase pressure, we decrease volume. So by pushing the syringe in, we're increasing the pressure because we're lowering the volume. So temperature gradient, concentration gradient, and pressure gradient. And then the last is our cell-to-cell communication. Again, the 2 main systems that are involved in cell-to-cell communication are the endocrine system, which uses chemical messengers. So does the nervous system. It uses neurotransmitters. And the electrical signals that are sent via action potentials. And we will talk a lot about action potentials this semester. And so you can communicate with neighboring cells, which is what usually the nervous system does. Or you can communicate with distant cells, which is what the endocrine system tends to do. And that is most or all of what we were going to cover for Chapter 1 in the lecture. The remainder of Chapter 1 will be covered during lab. I look forward to seeing you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Let me know if you have any questions.